All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, an interesting situation between Hadi Choppan and his former manager, Parsifar Madi. So I know that these two had a falling out behind the scenes due to some shady stuff that Parsifar was allegedly doing with Hadi's image. He was using his image to promote products that maybe Hadi didn't necessarily endorse himself. But they had this falling out, and they were really close. As you can see in this picture here, this was them traveling to the Olympia together in 2020 when they landed in the U.S. So they were really close, did a lot of stuff together, had a business relationship through bodybuilding. But today I saw that Parsifar posted this, and I thought this was interesting because Parsifar still actively posts all kinds of videos and pictures of Hadi Choppan all over his various social media channels. And Hadi Choppan himself apparently issued a copyright takedown on his former manager for using a video of him from the 2021 Mr. Olympia. And Parsifar said, and this is a translation of that caption, so there might be some things off here, but he says, Hadi Choppan reported our YouTube. He reported our private videos taken on a personal camera in an outrageous way. Now you wait for his crazy actions. When a consultation is given to someone who has a flower in a hashish garden, it will result in such a silly, impudent action. And he goes on to not only tag Hadi, but Hani Rambod, the Mr. Olympia, and Evogen. And as you guys know, Hadi Choppan is sponsored by Evogen, and him and Hani are good friends. And, you know, Hani actually takes care of Hadi and has his best interest at heart, which is something that Parsifar seems to have not had. And I also think it's interesting because some of the videos that Parsifar has posted of Hadi and has told people are recent videos leading up to 2022 were in fact not recent. So he's kind of doing this weird thing with these videos of Hadi. I don't know. It's kind of a strange situation. I thought it was maybe worth mentioning here. Whether or not it could impact Hadi at all as far as his prep for the Olympia, I don't know. But it's kind of an interesting story here. Now, next up in the news, let's talk bodybuilding. The show that's coming up this weekend, the Orlando Pro, which is also apparently the UBU Pro, or the UBU Expo is what people are calling it. So the men's open bodybuilding competitor list. You've got Tonio Burton, Max Charles, Phil Klahar. I'm excited to see him back on stage. Jonas Giatris, Jamil Hamilton, Martin Hernandez, Matt Kuba, Jason Lowe, Walter Martin, Hassan Mostafa, and Andrea Mosti. And I'm actually not sure if that's a typo, if that's supposed to be the other Andreas that we know, Andrea Presti or Andrea Musi, which I think it might be a typo. So this lineup is something I'm excited to see because you've got some different physiques in here, especially, you know, talking about Phil Klahar. He's a guy that last year in Tampa, he looked amazing. Probably the best version of him we've ever seen. I thought he was pushing Ian Valliere pretty hard in certain poses. His conditioning was fantastic. He's a big guy. He's a taller guy. I think it's going to be very interesting to see him in this lineup if he comes in as shredded as he did in Tampa last year. And we get to see Hassan again, which is something I'm curious to see because I think this is going to be a very definitive moment for Hassan. Now, we got these recent updates from Hassan at just 4 days out from the show. You've got this side tricep here and then a side chest. So the reason why I think this is interesting is the big thing with Hassan, I think, is really going to be consistency with this new level of conditioning that he's bringing. We saw him bring a really, really good level of conditioning to the last show that he did. When he won Puerto Rico just a week ago, I mean, it was one of the best versions of him we've ever seen. Conditioning was definitely on another level from what we've seen from him before. And the question is really going to be, can he replicate that and continue to replicate that and make that kind of his new signature thing? If we can see Hassan consistently conditioned, that's going to make for a very dangerous bodybuilder with the amount of size that Hassan carries. And you guys can see in these pictures, he still looks like he's in pretty good shape. He looks like he's pretty dry here. And also cartoonishly round, especially in that side chest. That side chest, even though it's kind of that classic Arnold variation of the side chest, he looks pretty damn crazy in that pose. And we're also going to see him compete even later in the season at the Arnold Classic UK, which is, that show seems to be a whole nother can of worms with some of the developments that we talked about with that show. The director of that show pleading guilty a couple days ago. But if Hassan can prove that he can hold on to and maintain that condition, replicate it, and maybe even, and this would be, I think, even more impressive, improve upon it. If he looks better here than he looked in Puerto Rico, I think that's huge for him. And then maybe he looks better, you know, in the UK than he looked at either of those two shows. And if he continues to improve his conditioning, I think he could be really dangerous at the Olympia, but I still stand by what I said. While I think his conditioning was good in Puerto Rico, I think it needs to be another level up at the Olympia. So what we're going to find out the next couple times we see him compete is whether or not that's going to be something he's able to do. But I'm very excited for the prospects of his competitive future. I'm really excited to see what Hassan's going to be able to do. Now, the next story that I've got for you guys today, this is one that I wanted to get your guys' opinion on because I think this is kind of an interesting one. I saw Logan Franklin post this on his story yesterday. There's a ton of guys right now qualified for the Classic Physique Mr. Olympia. Logan has the caption on there. There's going to be 50-plus guys at the Olympia and Classic. This feels like nationals. And it certainly seems like either there's just a lot more qualifying opportunities for Classic Physique guys, or it's a lot easier to qualify for the Classic Physique Olympia than men's open bodybuilding. And we'd seen this before with other divisions, and I think that has been something that's kind of not great for the other divisions, like the women's divisions. In bikini, you got men's physique. We see this thing happen in those divisions a lot where there's a ton of people qualified for the Olympia, and then it really gets narrowed down to like the same top 10 every year. So what's the point in all these other dozens of other people being there if it's supposed to be the best in the world at the Olympia? And that's something that I really like about men's open is you rarely see more than 20 guys qualified for the Open Olympia because A, it's so hard to qualify for the Olympia, and B, there's not a whole lot, there's not like a plethora of qualifying opportunities. And even the qualifying shows are kind of structured in a way where it's still going to be really only the best guys that are winning those shows. So my opinion on it is a couple of things. Number one, I really don't think it's that big of a deal that there's a bunch of guys in Classic. Is it going to water down the Classic Physique Olympia? I think only in the aspect of the length of the show. That's really the biggest drawback that I see to there being this many competitors because, like, again, bikini, for example, it makes the show so much longer. It makes the stream so much longer. If you're there in person, you're sitting there so much longer. I think it takes away from the experience to have that many people competing because they all have to do, they're posing their individual routine. They got to come out and do their thing. And it significantly lengthens the show. Does it dilute the quality of competition? I don't really think so because you're still going to have the top guys placing at the top. You're still going to have the top guys in the top callouts, and that's not going to change no matter how many people are there. So you're still going to get to see the best of the best in those top callouts. Then you also have to watch callouts maybe 4, 5, 6, and 7 if there's that many guys competing. And I think that's kind of the advantage that a show like the Arnold Classic US has in being an invitational is because they can have a lot more control over who they have there and how many people they have there competing. And I think that is something that drastically enhances the overall viewing experience from the aspect of how long the show actually is. So my question for you guys, do you think it's too easy to qualify for the Classic Physique Olympia? And do you think there's an issue with the number of competitors that are qualified now? Do you think it's too much? And if so, why? Now, next up in the news, another physique update from Keone at 5.3 weeks out. He says, celebrating the small changes every day because I know it will equal out to a bigger result later. And this is an update that I really like to see because 5 weeks out, you can already see some separation in his glutes and some pretty good detail and vascularity in his lower body and his legs. And this is something I literally said the last video. The big thing for Keone moving forward in 212 is going to be conditioning, specifically with the lower body. I thought that was something he was struggling with, especially at the Olympia. But the Chicago Pro that he won back-to-back, I think that was the main thing that was holding him back, was conditioning specifically in the lower body. This update to me suggests that Keone is hearing and internalizing that criticism, and he's doing something about it, because I think he looks like he's on track to be in better shape than he's ever been. Because really, if you look back at some of the old pictures of Keone or videos from those shows, he didn't really have much striation. Not that it's that important, but in 212, it seems like it's much more important to be crazy conditioned, have striated glutes, that sort of thing. And Keone, he was in good shape, but he didn't really have that level of grainy conditioning to where his glutes were striated, crazy separation in the hamstrings. That's what we need to see from Keone to see him really progress and move forward in this division. And I think it looks like he's making progress on doing that. I think the coolest top two at the 212 Olympia would be Keone and Derek having a pose down, because I've said this before. They've got really similar physiques. They're both very aesthetic, really good structure, really good lines. And I just think if they both were in crazy condition, that would be a really, really good call out for the top two in 212. It's just a matter of whether or not Keone can nail that conditioning and then, similar to Hassan, consistently nail it. And the final story that I've got for you guys today, another update of Petar Klancir ahead of that Mr. Big Evolution show, the Portugal Pro, which is going to be next week. And I'm expecting we're probably going to have that competitor list either late this week, but probably early next week. So we're going to know who all's in there. We know that he's doing it. We know that Tim Budishim's doing it. And again, I want to see some redemption for Petar after the show, because he kind of had an issue getting over to the States to compete in the Indy Pro, the New York Pro. Finally was able to show up for the Cali Pro, but I think that threw off his conditioning. He was a little bit off, even though he was still a top finisher at the Cali show. I want to see him have some redemption, some good conditioning. He's a really big dude. And maybe without all the stress of these visa issues, travel issues, maybe we'll see a much better version of him at this Mr. Big Show. Also, you got Vlad Saruchko doing that show. So that's going to be a big one, but that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you did enjoy it, like the video, subscribe if you have not subscribed already. Click that bell notification icon. And as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.